Imagine standing at dawn on the edge of a vast grassland. The horizon glows in soft gold as the first rays of sunlight spill across the earth. A shape moves in the distance, a horse, untamed and unbound, mane lifted by the morning breeze. It pauses, ears pricked, nostrils quivering as it tastes the air. No fence surrounds it. No human hand directs its path. It is both a part of the land and a guardian of its secrets. There's something profoundly stirring about a wild horse in its natural home. Its very presence speaks of endurance, freedom, and harmony, a life shaped by wind, grass, and open sky. This connection between the wild horse and its environment is not just survival. It's a delicate, almost mystical relationship that has evolved over millennia. Every step, every breath, every choice it makes is guided by the rhythms of the land. The changing seasons, the scent of water, the call of distant thunder. In this exploration, we'll uncover how wild horses read the land in ways that seem almost otherworldly. The subtle, wordless communication between horse and habitat. Long before the first human ever threw a rope over a horse's neck or slipped a foot into a stirrup, wild horses roamed open plains and windswept steppes. They were shaped by the land, and in turn, they shaped it. Fossil records show that horses originated in North America millions of years ago. Over time, they migrated across land bridges to Asia, Europe, and Africa, adapting to deserts, mountains, and grasslands. Their hooves became tougher for long journeys, their bodies leaner for swift escapes, their senses sharper to detect the faintest rustle in the brush. For millennia, wild horses lived not as outsiders, but as part of the natural rhythm of their environment. They grazed in herds that moved with the seasons, their presence influencing the growth of grasses and the dispersal of seeds. Predators shaped their vigilance. Harsh winters honed their endurance. In the harsh steppe lands of Mongolia, the Przewalski's horse, one of the last truly wild horse species, still survives. It endures temperatures that plummet far below freezing in winter and soar in summer. Its thick winter coat and short, sturdy body are a direct response to that environment. On the other side of the world, the mustangs of the American West thrive in semi-arid plains. They know where to find sparse water holes hidden among dry ravines and can travel miles across unforgiving land with an unerring sense of direction. These adaptations didn't come from training or domestication. They came from countless generations living in close dialogue with the land. A wild horse's day begins with the landscape itself. It listens to the wind, smells the moisture in the air, and senses shifts in the ground beneath its hooves. It knows when to move to higher ground ahead of a storm or where fresh grass will grow after a rain. This isn't magic. It's instinct sharpened by centuries of survival. Yet to watch, it is to witness a conversation so subtle and fluid that it feels almost mystical to human eyes. Unlike domestic horses, which often depend on humans for food, water, and shelter, the wild horse's bond with the environment is one of constant negotiation. It learns the routes of seasonal migration, remembers where rivers run deepest in drought, and reads the behavior of birds and insects to anticipate danger. Freedom, for a wild horse, is not just space to roam. It's the ability to listen to the land and respond. To understand the bond between wild horses and their environment, we must also understand the herd. A wild horse is rarely alone for long. Its connection to the land is deepened and reinforced by its connection to the group. A typical wild horse herd is led by a dominant mare, often older, wise, and experienced in navigating the land. The stallion's role is primarily protection, watching the horizon for predators, fending off rival males, and keeping the group cohesive. But the real guide is the lead mare. She knows where to find water in the dry months and which valleys will offer the first tender shoots of spring grass. The herd's movements mirror her knowledge, passed down through generations like an unwritten map. Within the herd, bonds run deep. Foals stay close to their mothers for safety and learn the rhythms of grazing and travel from older horses. Playful sparring among young colts builds strength and agility, but also teaches the limits of aggression. This social structure mirrors the demands of the land. Close-knit bonds provide protection against predators and help the herd coordinate when moving across vast distances. Herds do not strip the land bare as they move. Unlike grazing livestock in confined spaces, wild horses spread out across wide ranges, nibbling grasses selectively and moving on. This allows the vegetation to recover and seeds to disperse. In this way, the horse's survival benefits the very landscape it depends on. It is a cycle of give and take. The land sustains the herd, and the herd, in turn, sustains the land. Some herds migrate seasonally, moving between low valleys in winter and higher meadows in summer. The routes they follow often trace ancient paths that have been used for centuries. These patterns are not random. They reflect a deep, inherited memory of how best to live with the land. To watch a wild herd at dawn, scattered across a ridge, ears flicking at distant sounds, heads bent to graze in the soft light, is to witness an ancient partnership at work. The horses belong to the land as much as the rivers and the windswept grass. To the untrained eye, a wild horse's behavior might look simple, grazing, walking, resting. But beneath these seemingly ordinary actions lies a constant awareness of the world. A wild horse lives by its senses, tuned more finely than our own. A horse's eyes are set wide apart, allowing it to see almost the entire horizon without turning its head. It can detect movement hundreds of meters away, a flicker of grass that might mean a predator, the shift of a distant herd. This panoramic vision connects the horse to its environment in ways we often miss. It can graze with its head down while keeping watch over the horizon, always in dialogue with the land. A wild horse can smell water miles away, even underground. It can detect the faint musk of predators long before they are visible. Stallions use scent to track mares and to recognize the boundaries marked by other herds. The nose of a wild horse is not just an organ of smell. It's a tool for mapping the world. A horse's ears pivot like living radar dishes, catching distant sounds of thunder, the flutter of birds, or the crunch of a wolf's paw on dry leaves. They don't just hear, they interpret. A single rustle in the wrong place can trigger the decision to flee, a decision that may save the herd's life. Wild horses are deeply attuned to the ground beneath their hooves. They sense subtle changes in soil moisture that hint at hidden springs. Some researchers believe they can even feel distant vibrations, such as an approaching herd of bison or a predator, long before humans would ever notice. Perhaps most remarkable is how wild horses combine these senses with memory. A herd remembers where a river ran deep in drought, where a certain ridge gave early spring grass, where snowdrifts thinned first in harsh winters. This memory, passed through generations of following lead mares, becomes a living map of survival. To watch a wild horse lift its head suddenly, ears pricked and nostrils flared, is to see a creature in full conversation with the land. A dialogue too subtle for us to hear, but vital to the horse's survival. For thousands of years, wild horses lived in balance with the land. But in the past few centuries, that harmony has been shaken. The bond that once seemed timeless is now under pressure from forces the horse has never faced before. The most dramatic change came with human expansion. Grasslands that once stretched unbroken for hundreds of miles were fenced and divided into farms, ranches, and towns. Ancient migration routes that herds followed for generations were cut off. Water sources once shared by wildlife were diverted for agriculture and cities. Horses that once roamed free were pushed into smaller, often harsher territories. As land use shifted, wild horses often found themselves in competition with livestock for grazing. Where once they could move seasonally to find fresh pastures, now they were often confined to smaller areas where the land could not recover as easily. This disruption affects not only the horses, but also the grasses, soil, and other wildlife that once thrived in a delicate balance. In recent decades, the changing climate has introduced new challenges. Longer droughts dry up watering holes. Sudden wildfires destroy grazing lands. Harsh winters arrive later or strike harder than before. The instincts of wild horses to migrate, to anticipate the seasons, are sometimes outpaced by the rapid shifts in their environment. Efforts to protect wild horses often conflict with the needs of ranchers or conservationists managing fragile ecosystems. Some herds are rounded up and relocated to prevent overgrazing, while others are fenced off from key habitats. The horse, a creature that once belonged entirely to the open land, now lives at the edge of two worlds, the wild and the human-shaped. Watching a wild herd today in a protected reserve or a remote valley still inspires awe. But it also carries a note of fragility. Their connection to the land is as strong as ever, yet the land itself is changing beneath their hooves. The challenge for us is to understand that protecting wild horses means protecting the ecosystems that sustain them. Without the freedom to roam, the ancient partnership between horse and environment begins to fray. There is something humbling in watching a wild horse stand motionless on a ridge, mane rippling in the wind, eyes scanning the horizon. It reminds us that survival, in its purest form, depends on awareness and respect for the land. Wild horses have no illusions of ownership. They belong to the land not because they claim it, but because they live within its limits. Unlike domestic animals that rely on human care, wild horses must listen to the changing seasons. They know when to move to higher ground in spring to find fresh grass, and when to return to sheltered valleys as winter snow deepens. This rhythm teaches a powerful lesson. Prosperity is not about forcing the land to provide, but about aligning with what it offers. For centuries, wild horses have adapted to extremes, drought, predators, shifting pastures. They teach us resilience not as stubbornness, but as flexibility. Humans often try to control the environment, bending it to our needs. Wild horses show us that thriving often means learning to adapt to what is already there. In the wild, leadership is not the rule of the strongest, but of the most trusted. The lead mare earns her position through wisdom, knowing where water lies hidden, sensing the approach of storms, choosing safe paths for the herd. This reminds us that true leadership is grounded in experience, guidance, and service to the group, not in domination. A wild horse lives fully in the present. It reacts to the wind, the rustle of grass, the shift of light on a distant hill. Its life depends on a constant, intimate connection with the world around it. In our often noisy and distracted lives, this capacity for presence is a reminder of something we've largely forgotten. That to feel truly at home in the world, we need to be attentive to it. Wild horses do not simply inhabit the land. They shape it as they graze. The seeds they scatter grow new grasses, their hooves aerate the soil. The land, in turn, shapes their movements, behaviors, and survival. It is a partnership of mutual belonging, a balance we humans once shared but have largely lost. There is a moment, if you are lucky enough to see it, when a wild horse lifts its head as the evening light fades. Its breath steams in the cool air. The herd grazes quietly behind it, the wind whispers over the plain, and the sky stretches endlessly above. In that moment, you sense something beyond survival, a quiet understanding between the horse and the land. It is as if they recognize one another, as if their lives are intertwined in a way that neither dominates nor diminishes the other. This bond between a wild horse and its environment is fragile, yet it is ancient. It reminds us that the natural world is not just a backdrop to our lives, but a living system to which all creatures belong. When we fence the land, redirect the rivers, or fragment the ranges, we do more than limit the horse's freedom. We weaken a connection that has existed for millennia, a connection that has something profound to teach us about humility and belonging. In the wild horse's freedom, we see our own longing for a simpler, more grounded existence. Its survival, shaped by the seasons and guided by instinct, shows us how to live in tune with the world rather than apart from it. Their resilience teaches patience. Their migrations teach respect for limits. Their quiet leadership teaches that strength lies in wisdom, not force. As stewards of the earth, it is up to us to ensure that the landscape's wild horses depend on remain whole and alive. Protecting them means protecting grasslands, rivers, and the delicate balance of life that sustains more than just horses. By doing so, we also safeguard something less tangible, but just as vital: the reminder that true freedom is not a life without limits, but a life in harmony with the world that sustains us. If this story has stirred your heart, if it has reminded you of the value of the wild and the lessons it still offers, we invite you to join us. Subscribe to Horse Sense and help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. Together, we can share more stories of the deep and enduring connections between horses and the natural world. Stories that inspire respect, protection, and awe for the creatures who live closest to the land. Because the bond between a wild horse and its environment is not just theirs to cherish, it is ours to learn from.